Well, I actually think that I'm quite delighted with how the stamped resists have come out. If you have a look on the back, you'll see them more clearly. So this was the dolphin where I used quite a lot of resist. That was the little mosaic tiles, the little daisy, and the strawberry. I could paint the backgrounds of these quarters in different colors, but because I just want to show you the technique, I'm going to just paint it all in one color. So I've put it onto a piece of cardboard and opened a jar of paint and found that there's a skin, which isn't actually going to be the end of the world, but it's just a nuisance. So I've just removed that with another paintbrush. And now I'm going to simply just take my, oh hang on, one important step, gosh, we can't do without this. I'm going to take my fabric and I'm going to crunch it in my hands, just moving it about so it crunches in different directions, so that I create little tiny little cracks in this. And hopefully this will work. If it doesn't, well, nothing too harmful. Okay, so now I'm just going to paint over this whole background design. What will probably happen here is that I'll have a lovely jade background where there is no design, and then where I have put the design and the flour and water is actually blocking the paint from going into the fabric, I should end up with little tiny veins and maybe a little bit of color in the design, but not too much. So it will be largely creamy white where the resist is, and then the rest will be largely creamy white where the resist is, the color of the fabric, which is this calico, and then maybe just a few small veins. All in all, it should have done its trick. If it hasn't, possibly I need to make the resist a little bit thicker for the stamps, but let's just see what happens. It's all a learning curve. I've never done it with stamps before. I've done quite a few videos on BATIK crackle, this kind of technique, and I'll link the playlist in the description box below so that you're welcome to go and have a look at those if you want to see some other examples. And if you have done this before, please let me know what you did and whether it was successful or not. Yeah, I've used this quite a lot as backgrounds for tablecloths and cushions and things back home, but I don't really have a lot of space here, so it's quite difficult for me to do this at some times of the year. Right, in order to get the paint to penetrate any cracks that there might be in the resist, I am just going to push down on my paint using a little stencil brush once I've covered the whole background in color. So let's just move this paint along. The next steps after this would be to heat set the color into the fabric, because we will ultimately need to wash the flour and water out of the fabric, and so any paint that's sitting on top of the flour and water is going to lift, hence you're going to see the color of the fabric underneath. But you do need to make sure that your fabric paint's not going to lift at the same time. So in order to do that, you want to put a piece of plain white copy paper or a piece of baking parchment onto your ironing board, and then put the painted side of this design down flat on the actual ironing board. Set your iron on a hot dry setting, and you want to iron for 2 to 3 minutes to fix the color in there. Swapping now to this little stencil brush, and just over the area where there's a design, I'm just going to press down quite hard. You'll see that there are these little veins appearing, and I don't mind if it's not all over. Just a few little marks might make it quite interesting. I'm not going to take this any steps further. I'm not making up a finished product with this, but you could use these as parts of a junk journal, maybe an embellishment for a cover. You could do with just one design and then actually use that to make a book cover. You could make little bags, you could make cushions, all sorts of things. I think the dolphin's going to turn out really nicely. We will see. Right, so just pressing the fabric paint down in the eventuality of any of it cracking, but it will certainly have blocked out that background color paint. So this is going to dry now, and then once it's dry, I'm going to put it face downwards to heat set it. and then I will rinse the color out, but I will show you this once it's dry. Well, I'm excited to see the results of this one because I've never actually used this sponge stamps as a means of transferring a design onto a piece of fabric, and I think it's worked. I love what's happened here on the dolphins, how around the back here I've got those little crackle marks. These are slightly more subtle, but this one you can definitely see that something has happened here. So the flour and water is going to stop fabric paint from penetrating into the fabric, except where there is none. And if we turn this over, you can see here you've got those lovely little marks along the fin, which are going to show up, and then this will largely be white. This will largely be white, but because the application was not as solid, you'll see that there are little flecks. This one I'm not so sure about. It may or may not look good when it's finished because the mixture was a little bit thinner there, as was that. But what I need to do as a next step now is that I need to go and set the color. And with most fabric paints, you will do that by putting a piece of paper over your design and then ironing with a hot dry iron for 2 to 3 minutes. Always a good idea if you've got different fabric paints to check the instructions on your bottle, but do that first, and then I'm going to just soak this in some cold water so that I can just dissolve the flour and water. I'll let that dry and then I'll come back and show you the result. Well, here we are at the end of our experiment, and I've got some successes and some failures. So I think for me the ones that have worked the best are the dolphin and this mosaic stamp, and you'll see that these stamps have really quite a nice sort of solid block effect rather than this strawberry, which has a lot of fine detail. And as you'll see here, it hasn't really worked that well, and neither has that little flower, although I think if I was to do this flower again, I would put the flour and water resist on a bit thicker, remove it from the little dots, and I might get a better result. But definitely the ones that are more solid designs with the little stamps work as a resist, and I'm very thrilled with what I've got on this side of it. But that side, yeah, I can still work on it, I could still have some fun, but for now those are the ultimate successes. Thank you for joining me, and if this has been helpful to you or if you've enjoyed the content, please subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. And it's been great to share this knowledge with you. Bye.